Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the steamy, chaotic, and deeply overwhelming world of imperial cuisine. Not the serene, calligraphy-filled fantasy of elegant silk robes and delicate teacups. This is the back kitchen of the Forbidden City, where the floors are slippery, the fires never stop, and you can't tell if that smell is duck fat or despair. You're about to spend a full day inside the palace kitchens that once fed the emperors of Ming and Qing China. And I'll be honest, you probably won't survive this. Not from execution, though that's always on the table, but from sheer exhaustion, endless chopping, and the crushing anxiety of delivering lukewarm soup across 1,000 courtyards. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing our sleepy little time zones connect. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun hasn't even cleared the rooftops, and already the kitchen is alive. Smoke curls from stone chimneys, firewood cracks and spits, and the sound of cleavers on wood blocks is steady, like a military drumline powered by caffeine and fear. You arrive at the rear gate, where deliveries and servants enter, not the fancy front steps. No one bows. No one smiles. A man shoves a sack of taro into your arms and tells you to stop standing like a statue. You shuffle inside through a narrow corridor, lit only by flickering oil lamps. The air grows hotter with every step. Somewhere a gong sounds. Morning prep has begun. You pass rows of steaming bamboo baskets, hanging pork bellies, and a very judgmental-looking duck suspended upside down from a copper hook. There is no welcome ceremony, just a barked order. You. Root station. You're handed a dull knife and pointed toward a pile of lotus roots stacked taller than you. The other workers, junior cooks, scullery teens, maybe one ghost, are already peeling and chopping in practiced silence. You sit on a low stool and get to work. The roots are covered in mud and more holes than Swiss cheese. The knife barely scrapes them. Your fingers slip constantly. You're soon soaked in a combination of vegetable slime and your own embarrassment. A girl next to you mutters something under her breath. You think it might be rookie or radish. Honestly, she could be talking about your posture. Historians still argue whether the kitchens were staffed entirely by eunuchs, or whether commoners like you were brought in as assistants. Judging by the sweat stains around you, it seems no one here is exempt from hard labor. As the sun climbs higher, the noise rises. Shouting, chopping, boiling, and the occasional yelp from someone who definitely touched a hot pot without thinking. You're not just peeling. You're dodging elbows, avoiding spills, and praying you don't ruin someone's dumpling prep with a careless elbow. One man carries a tray of raw turtle and glares like it's your fault he has to. You nod solemnly. He nods back. That's how friendship starts here. The kitchen is enormous, a sprawling network of chambers, courtyards, storerooms, and stoves. It takes over a dozen rooms to prepare meals for the emperor, his family, and the 10,000 bureaucrats, guards, concubines, and cousins who seem to constantly be hungry. No one has time to explain anything. You learn by copying, mimicking, and occasionally panicking. An older woman corrects your grip on the knife without looking. She's peeling lotus root with one hand and stirring a pot with the other. You suspect she hasn't slept since the Kangxi reign. Midway through your shift, someone yells, "Duck delivery!" and a squabble breaks out over who gets the fresh batch. A fight over poultry is apparently a daily occurrence. You duck, pun intended, as a ladle goes flying. You're still peeling. The pile is no smaller. You've forgotten what your fingers look like. This is just the beginning. The pile of lotus roots never ends. You're convinced that somewhere, someone is adding more when your back is turned. Your fingers are puckered and nicked, your sleeves damp with root slime, and your knife, which was never sharp to begin with, now functions more as a suggestion than a tool. But the kitchen doesn't slow down just because your wrists are sore. The air grows thicker with smoke and steam. Somewhere, oil hits hot metal with a sizzle sharp enough to jolt you upright. They're shouting near the dumpling station again, and someone runs past with a tray of glistening tofu cubes, slipping slightly before regaining balance like a trained acrobat who smells faintly of garlic. You're abruptly reassigned. A junior overseer with a voice like an angry bell claps their hands and points toward the back wall, where a line of young assistants is forming by a row of massive iron stoves. You're handed a bucket of chopped wood and told, "Fire pit. Don't die." The phrase seems both casual and sincere. You make your way to a squat opening in the wall that leads to the belly of the stove, one of at least 12 arranged side by side. These stoves don't cook one meal at a time. They're the engine rooms of entire court banquets. Each one can hold a vat the size of a horse trough and radiates enough heat to roast a person from 10 feet away. Your job is simple. Feed the fire, constantly, carefully, quietly. You kneel in the soot-streaked chamber, shovel in hand, and begin to add wood to the flickering flame. Immediately, your face is greeted by a rush of heat so intense your eyelashes twitch. You back up, startled, and smack into another assistant. They mutter something that might be a curse or advice. You adjust. You get closer. The sweat starts almost instantly. It drips from your scalp, slides down your back, collects under your arms. Your shirt is soaked within minutes. You've never appreciated a cold breeze more, until you realize there is no breeze. Not here. Just fire, smoke, and the steady drone of kitchen labor. Every few minutes, someone calls out for more wood. You scramble to comply, refilling buckets, ducking low beams, and stepping over chickens that seem to have wandered into the madness uninvited. One pecks at your boot. You pretend not to notice. At one point, the head fire stoker, a man with shoulders like oxen and a towel permanently welded to his forehead, checks your work. He grunts approvingly. This, you assume, is the highest honor available today. Historians still argue whether the Forbidden City kitchens had organized fire crews, or if fire tending was shared duty among lower-tier workers. Judging by the sheer intensity of this role, you're starting to think there was a hidden caste system based entirely on fire resistance. A bell rings somewhere up the corridor. Not the big bronze one. This is smaller, sharper, and repeated 3 times. You don't know what it means, but the stoking team immediately shifts. The headman barks something, and several of you are redirected to another room. You follow blindly, stumbling into a low-ceilinged chamber where the air smells overwhelmingly of ginger, duck fat, and something bitter and burnt. Steam coils from 5 enormous cauldrons bubbling away like potion vats. This is the kanji station. You're given a long wooden paddle and told to stir. You do. The rice is thick, gummy, and has a disturbing tendency to fight back. You stir clockwise. Someone yells, "Other way." You stir counterclockwise. This continues for a while. At one point, your arms go numb. You don't stop. the chef overseeing the station, an older woman with a face like a steamed bun that's seen too much, leans in close and says, "If it burns, we all suffer." Noted. Your paddling becomes more serious. The congee thickens. A ladle is dipped, tasted, approved. Then just like that, you're pulled off again, back to the fire room. Another bucket. Another wave of heat. You wonder if this is what reincarnation is like. Just an endless cycle of sweating, stirring, and duck-based confusion. By midday, your body has learned to regulate sweat with eerie precision. Your face is red. Your palms are blistered, and yet you persist. Somehow. Barely. There's a pause. Brief. Like the ee of a storm, and someone hands you a bowl. Soup. Thin, warm, and full of bits you can't identify but gratefully swallow. You sit by the wall for exactly 4 minutes before you're tapped again. More fire. More heat. No questions. You don't even resist anymore. You just stand up and go. By now, your body has resigned itself to the reality of heat. You're not even sweating anymore. It's like your pores gave up. You've become a walking stewed dumpling with legs, existing in a constant state of mild dehydration and borderline hallucination. Which is perfect, because the next task makes no sense at all. You're tapped on the shoulder by someone you've never seen before, a young eunuch in pale blue robes, looking far too clean for someone in this building. He hands you a lacquered tray and says simply, "Egg count. Now." You blink. Egg count? He nods like you've just been asked to guard the Emperor's soul. You follow him through a side corridor, past the dumpling station, the noodle yard, and what appears to be an argument over yam placement. Eventually, you arrive at a cool, quiet room lined with ceramic jars and polished wooden bins. It feels different, less chaotic, which, of course, means more pressure. This is the egg room. On the wall hangs a painted scroll with an inventory chart. Below it, baskets upon baskets of duck eggs, each arranged neatly on silk pads, like tiny jade artifacts. You're handed a brush and an ink slab. Your job is to tally the count. Precisely. And here's the catch. These are for the Empress Dowager's morning meal. One wrong count, and her porridge goes eggless. That's not a mistake. It's a catastrophe. You begin. 1, 2, 3, 20, 37. Halfway through, you sneeze. A tray trembles. An egg rolls gently off the edge and shatters on the stone floor with the softest, most damning crack you've ever heard. The eunuch's face does not change, but his eyebrows definitely move. You freeze. "Replace it," he says, tone flat. You scramble, fumbling through the reserve basket until you find one that matches. You set it back in place, brush in hand, heart galloping like a runaway rickshaw. He watches. Then slowly, he nods. "Good," he says. "Try not to exist so loudly." Then he vanishes like steam off a wok. You resume counting, now fully aware that every egg in this room is a potential political incident. You finish. The count is logged. No one claps. Next, you're handed a tray of carrots. Chopping time. You shuffle back to the prep hall, your spiritual home at this point, where a row of junior assistants is furiously slicing, dicing, julienning, and not crying even when the onions bite. You sit. A knife is dropped in front of you. A real knife this time. Sharp, balanced, intimidating. The head knife master, an elderly man with 6 fingers and the quiet presence of a retired assassin, glances your way. He says nothing, just watches. You begin chopping. Your first few slices are passable. The next few are lopsided. The ones after that look like what would happen if a carrot fell downstairs. The knife master sighs audibly. He walks over, takes your hands, and repositions them with the calm disappointment of a man who's seen too many vegetable crimes. Then he demonstrates. Each slice of his carrot is identical, thin as paper, smooth, whisper quiet. He places his blade down, looks at you and says, "The Emperor's teeth are important." You nod solemnly. This isn't about carrots anymore. Historians still argue whether kitchen staff were actually trained in court etiquette, or if knife skills were the only etiquette that mattered. In this room, it's clear. Your knife is your honor. You try again. Slower, focused. Slice, slice, slice. Slightly better. The master returns to his station. You feel his judgment from across the room, but it's gentler now. As the bell gongs again for the next rotation, you're allowed to stay. Just chop. Just breathe. Just exist. And for a few minutes, in this blisteringly hot, turnip-scented palace of fire and fear, you almost feel competent. Then your finger slips, and you slice the tip of your glove, not your skin, just the glove. Still, you're reassigned. Apparently, that's all it takes. You're given no time to process the carrot chopping incident. A hand tugs your sleeve, and before you can ask where you're going, you're handed a large lacquered bowl filled with soup so hot it seems to be simmering despite not being near a fire. Thin steam curls up from the surface, perfumed with ginger, scallion, and something faintly mysterious. Maybe dried abalone, maybe a mushroom with delusions of grandeur. "This goes to Courtyard 3, someone says. You blink. They stare. You nod. And just like that, you're off, carrying what is clearly a very important bowl of soup across the Forbidden City's labyrinth of polished stone walkways, winding corridors, carved thresholds, and slightly judgmental doorways. No map, no instructions. Just you, the soup, and the quiet terror of spilling even a drop. You exit the kitchen complex and step into the open air, which feels like heaven after the fire pits, but also instantly reminds you how sweaty you are. The bowl in your hands trembles faintly. You realize your arms are still shaking from fire duty. You pass through the first courtyard, carefully navigating flagstones slick with condensation. 2 robed servants sweep past you without a glance. A eunuch clears his throat behind you and says, "Watch the fish tiles. They're cursed." You're not sure if it's a joke. You avoid them anyway. The path takes you under a curved eave, through an arch painted with red and gold dragons, and into a corridor lined with panels of carved bamboo. You walk, as if balancing a stack of coins on your head, willing the soup to remain perfectly still. Then, an obstacle. 2 palace guards, deep in conversation about something involving a missing saddle, block the narrow walkway. You hesitate, then politely cough. One glances at you, shrugs, and takes a slow half-step to the side, just enough for you to squeeze through with all the grace of a steamed bun being pushed through a coin slot. You make it. Barely. Courtyard 3 is quiet, eerily so. A plum tree leans toward a lotus pond, petals floating serenely on the surface. A low bench holds an elderly woman in embroidered robes, attended by 2 maids. She doesn't look up as you approach. You kneel, awkwardly, and present the bowl. A maid accepts it. No words, no thanks, just a nod. You bow. You back away. You exhale. And then someone says, "Wrong courtyard." You freeze. A boy, no older than 10, appears at your elbow. That soup was for the consort dowager. This is the embroidery courtyard. You stare at him. He stares back, unimpressed. But they took it. He shrugs. They'll eat anything. And then he walks off. You stand very still, calculating how much trouble you're in, and whether it would be faster to run or to hide in a barrel of pickled mustard greens for the rest of your natural life. Before you can move, the elderly woman speaks. Her voice is low, but somehow cuts through the courtyard like a silk ribbon slicing air. That broth was slightly undersalted, she says, not unkindly. Tell the kitchen to taste before sending next time. You bow again, 3 times this time, and shuffle backward until your legs hit a lantern post. Once safely out of sight, you collapse onto a stone bench and stare up at the sky, which seems to be laughing at you with every lazy, drifting cloud. Historians still argue how food was delivered through the palace complex, whether it was done by eunuchs exclusively, or if junior staff ever dared carry dishes themselves. One thing is certain. It was a minefield of etiquette, timing, and flavor preferences. And now, you are part of that history. Barely. A bell rings from the far end of the corridor. You jump. Back to the kitchens. You jog now, bowlless and full of nerves, retracing your steps with only one small detour, involving a startled cat and a very confused painter. By the time you re-enter the scullery, you're already being yelled at. Where have you been? The mushrooms are boiling over. You rush to the pot. You stir. You pretend you belong. And you swear to yourself, if anyone asks you to deliver soup again, you're falling mysteriously ill. You thought the soup disaster would earn you a break, or at least a demotion to something harmless like folding napkins. Instead, you're handed a wooden tub full of soft, gelatinous things that look like sea slugs crossed with long-forgotten vegetables. A label reads, sea cucumbers. Clean them, a woman says, dropping the tub at your feet and walking off before you can even form a question. You stare at them. They stare back. Sea cucumbers, you quickly learn, are not vegetables. They're marine animals, technically echinoderms, and their job is to look horrifying while somehow being considered a delicacy by emperors. Cleaning them is an art form, but you are not an artist. You sit on a low stool, basin in your lap, and begin. Step 1, rinse them in hot water. Step 2, slice open their bellies and scoop out whatever horrors they've decided to keep inside. Step 3, not scream. They're squishy, cold, and smell like a tide pool had a bad day. Every time you think you've cleaned one, you squeeze it gently and realize it's holding secrets. One releases a foul-smelling puff of sand. Another tries to curl around your finger like a sea monster with abandonment issues. You mutter to yourself, questioning every life choice that brought you to this moment. A nearby worker hears you and offers a helpful tip. Don't get attached to them. They sense weakness. You can't tell if he's joking. The hours crawl. Eventually, your hands are numb and smell like brine and sadness. You've cleaned 37 sea cucumbers, or maybe 36.5. One of them sort of dissolved. Someone taps your shoulder and hands you a bowl of rice. You eat it gratefully, despite the fact that it's plain and somehow both undercooked and overcooked at the same time. There's one piece of pickled vegetable on top. You savor it like it's Peking duck. After lunch, there's a sudden ripple of tension across the kitchen. Imperial tasting, someone whispers. Everyone freezes. Apparently, one of the Emperor's inspectors is about to arrive for a surprise tasting, a routine check, to ensure quality, safety, and perhaps that no one is sneakily trying to poison royalty. Totally normal. Panic sets in. Dishes are wiped. Platters are adjusted. Herbs are replaced with fresher herbs. One assistant frantically tries to carve prettier radish flowers before realizing he's still holding a turnip. Then disaster. Someone drops a tray of dumplings. You don't see it. You hear it. The soft, staccato plop, plop, plop of delicate wrappers hitting stone. Gasps all around. The tray was meant for the tasting. The head chef looks like he's about to implode. His face turns redder than the lacquered walls. You, he barks, pointing straight at you. Why is it always you? Run to the cold storage and bring back the backup set, now. You drop your sea cucumber and bolt. Through the kitchen, down a hallway, across 2 courtyards, past a monk, a eunuch, and what might be the same confused duck from earlier. You arrive at the cold room, stone-walled, dark, and chilly. Inside, racks of prepared items glisten under the dim lantern light. Preserved meats, pickled plums, and yes, dumplings. Steamed, stacked, and neatly covered. You grab the right tray. At least you hope it's the right one. You sprint back, dodging a group of musicians, slipping slightly near the vinegar storage, and finally bursting into the kitchen just as the inspector arrives. He's dressed simply, but his presence quiets the room. He carries a jade spoon. He smells each dish first, then samples a sliver here, a sip there. He says nothing. Then he reaches the dumplings. He takes one, bites, chews, and nods. Barely. The tension deflates. The head chef nearly faints from relief. You, meanwhile, are still gasping like you've just outrun a tiger. The inspector leaves. You collapse on a sack of rice and stare at the ceiling. Historians still debate whether imperial tasters were eunuchs, chefs, or agents of internal security. Whoever he was, he definitely noticed your sprinting and your sweaty face. No one thanks you, but someone hands you a candied walnut. That's good enough. You crunch the candied walnut slowly, savoring every grain of sugar, like it's a blessing from the kitchen god himself. Your lungs are still catching up to the rest of your body after that sprint, and your legs feel like overcooked noodles. But there's no time to gloat or recover. Someone points to a tall wooden rack stacked with copper bowls. Tea service to the Eastern Pavilion, they say. You open your mouth to protest, but the bowls are already being stacked into your arms. Don't spill, the voice adds helpfully. This isn't soup this time, thankfully, but you've been given something arguably worse. Hot broth, thickened with medicinal herbs and mushrooms, destined for a prince's private breakfast table. You begin walking. But here's the thing they never tell you about the Forbidden City. It's a maze. Courtyards lead to corridors that lead to covered walkways that somehow double back on themselves. Every doorway looks like the last. And when you finally think you've found a landmark, say, the tiger statue by the koi pond, it turns out there are at least 4 of them. You stop and ask a passing eunuch. He points in 3 different directions simultaneously. You nod and pretend understanding, and choose one. Eventually, you arrive, probably, to the correct courtyard. A row of potted plum trees lines the wall, and a silk screen depicting a mountain goat under a pine tree flaps lightly in the breeze. This must be it. A boy in silken slippers appears at the edge of the path. "You're late," he says, though with the bored tone of someone who was born unimpressed. You bow and offer the tray. He sniffs, grimaces faintly, and disappears inside without a thank you. You stand there for a full 30 seconds, holding an empty tray and questioning the concept of dignity. Then you turn back around and begin the long walk to the kitchens. Halfway there, you hear your name, or at least the name they've given you. Little Leek. You turn to find a familiar face, Elder Chen, the pickle master. "You're on vinegar duty," he says, with a tone that can only be described as apologetic menace. You follow him to a shady side building where large clay vats are lined up like sleepy giants. These contain radishes, cabbage, ginger, garlic, all soaking in brine or pungent black vinegar so strong your eyes start watering before you even take the lid off. Your job: stir them. Slowly, carefully, consistently. You lift a bamboo paddle taller than you are and dip it into the closest vat. A swirl of bubbles rises to the surface, along with the unmistakable scent of aggressive fermentation. It gets in your nose, in your hair, possibly your soul. You move from vat to vat, mixing and adjusting. Elder Chen mutters about ratios, the lunar cycle, and the troublesome acidity of this generation's garlic. You nod solemnly, pretending to understand. After a while, your arms ache again. Your back stiffens, but the smell has oddly grown on you. Sharp, alive, oddly cleansing. You think maybe you're going nose blind. Then a beetle the size of a dumpling crawls out from under a jar lid. You drop your paddle. It clatters. The beetle freezes. You both stare at each other. "Don't scream," Elder Chen says without turning around. They like vinegar, too. You don't scream. You just stir more quietly. Historians still argue whether imperial pickling practices were ritualistic or simply pragmatic food preservation. After today, you suspect both. There's something sacred about the slosh of ginger brine, even if it smells like a punch in the face. You're dismissed just as the sun dips low behind the eaves. You're sweaty, sore, vinegar-scented. You are also somehow starving. Someone passes you a rice ball wrapped in lotus leaf. You eat it in 4 bites. It tastes like heaven, or at least like not sea cucumber. As you finish, a bell rings again. Another errand? Numbered just a call for water collection. You sigh in relief, until you realize water collection means hauling wooden buckets from the well to the wash basins, 20 trips minimum. Of course, you hoist the first bucket from the well and immediately question everything about its design. It's wood. It leaks. It has a handle made from rope that looks like it was chewed by a dog and retied by someone in a rush. And it weighs about as much as your dignity, which at this point isn't saying much. But still, it's heavy. You haul it across the courtyard toward the main wash area, where an assembly line of assistants is already scrubbing bowls, pots, ladles, and mysterious tools that resemble medieval dental equipment. You're waved in like a late recruit and begin the loop. Fill, walk, pour, repeat. The path from the well to the washroom is lined with loose stones, and one aggressively angry goose who appears to have staked its territory right in the center. The first time you pass, it honks. The second time, it lunges. By the third trip, you're giving it a wide arc and muttering prayers to the kitchen god for mercy. After 10 trips, your shoulders begin to buzz with that special kind of pain, usually reserved for competitive rowing. After 15, your legs are jelly. After 20, you begin to hallucinate that the goose is whispering insults. But you survive. Barely. Just as you slump against the wash basin to recover, a low whistle cuts through the air. A hand beckons you from a side door. You follow, still panting. You find yourself in a small storage room filled with sacks of rice, urns of oil, and baskets of things you can't even name. One is definitely full of dried frogs. Another assistant grins and hands you a wooden crate. "Spices," he says. "Time for counting." You lift the lid and immediately sneeze, violently. Pepper, ginger, cloves, something sharp and citrusy, something bitter and rooty. There's a smell like aged cinnamon, and something else that might be sandalwood, or perhaps just dirt from a sacred mountain. The spice storage is deep and dim, lit only by a single lantern hanging from a beam above. The room pulses with scent, layers and layers of it, like 1,000 memories arguing with your nose. You begin counting jars. Each is labeled with careful brushstrokes and wrapped with red twine. Your job is to tally, not sample. But you crack one lid open slightly, just to peek. Inside, dried orange peel, curled like fossilized smiles. Another, star anise, geometric and elegant. Another, Sichuan peppercorns, just daring you to touch your eye afterward. You don't. Historians still argue whether the Forbidden City kept separate spice inventories for court medicine and culinary use. Judging by the jars here, it's possible the line between flavor and remedy was blurry on purpose. As you lift one jar to place it on a shelf, a sudden yowl slices through the silence. You jump, spinning just in time to see a royal cat, fluffy, furious, and very offended, leap out from behind a sack of dried scallions. It bolts between your legs and knocks over a tray of ginger root before disappearing through a hole in the wall, like a tiny, dramatic ghost. A monk steps into the doorway, blinking slowly. He glances at the mess, then at you. You open your mouth to explain, but he simply says, "That cat hates clove," and walks away. You clean up in silence. The final jar contains tiny dried rosebuds, pale pink and dusted with what might be sugar or powdered bone. You don't ask. You log the number and close the ledger. When you emerge from the spice room, the light has shifted. The sky outside is deepening into a bruised purple. Lanterns are being lit, and the air is cooler now, almost gentle. You lean against a wall and inhale deeply. A mistake, because now you smell like vinegar, ginger, and fear. Still, you've made it through another circuit, another fireless trial, another segment of this strange, exhausting, mesmerizing day. And then a voice calls out your name. Little leak again. And you turn, expecting more buckets, more chopping, maybe a pastry emergency. But no. "You're on gossip patrol," says the woman who runs the dessert station. You blink. "What?" She hands you a teacup and says, "Just listen, then report," and disappears. You look down at the cup. It's warm, fragrant, sweet. You sip, and decide not to question it. You're still not entirely sure what gossip patrol means. But you're holding a cup of floral-scented tea. The sky has finally stopped trying to murder you with humidity. And for the first time all day, you are not actively chopping, lifting, scrubbing, or dodging anything with feathers. So you sit. It turns out the dessert station is positioned in the perfect spot, just far enough from the stove heat, but close enough to hear everything. To your left, the pickle master is whispering with the poultry steward about how someone's turtle soup turned out too thin. To your right, a dumpling maker swears she saw one of the concubine's attendants sneak into the pantry with a pastry tin that definitely didn't belong to her. You sip. From around a corner, you hear the tail end of a story involving a failed mango pudding and someone crying behind the sugar storage. Then a lower voice interjects, muttering, "They'll blame the sesame chef again. Poor fool. Didn't even touch the pudding." You nod to yourself. This is oddly soothing. Then the head of the dessert station, a stern woman who stirs lotus paste like she's interrogating it, leans over and says, "Do you know why we don't serve plum sauce anymore?" You shake your head. She doesn't blink. 3 years ago, she whispers, A minor official from the Western Annex ate a custard bun dipped in plum sauce. Immediately had a nosebleed. Swore it was an omen. Collapsed. The Dowager Consort declared plum a cursed flavor. Banned it. Now we only use apricot. You stare at her. She sips her tea. Historians still argue whether he faked the nosebleed, she adds, then returns to icing sesame cakes, as if nothing happened. You glance around. Everything seems normal, but now you're eyeing every apricot glaze, like it's hiding a secret. Later, a young confectioner sets down a tray of sugar-dusted fruits and sighs. I heard the rice chef was demoted. Why? You ask. She shrugs. Wrong texture. They said it felt lonely. You don't know what that means. She doesn't either, but it sounds believable. A bell rings in the distance. You flinch. The woman beside you snorts. Don't worry. That's just for tea delivery. Unless it rings twice. Then it's trouble. It rings twice. Instantly the air tenses. Someone drops a spoon. From the far end of the kitchen complex, a eunuch runs past yelling, "Her Highness requests midnight tea." You exhale. You are not on tea duty tonight. Then you hear it. Little leak. Of course. You're handed a lacquered tray with a teapot, 2 porcelain cups, and a tiny dish of candied lotus root slices. The woman packing the tray mutters, "Don't trip. This is for the Dowager Consort. She once exiled a man for offering her lukewarm chrysanthemum." You nod slowly, wondering if it's too late to hide under the rice sacks. You walk carefully through the corridors, past flickering lanterns and fading incense. The halls are quieter now, cloaked in that peculiar stillness that falls over enormous palaces once the daytime bustle fades. You reach the doorway, kneel, and present the tray. A soft voice behind a curtain says, "Leave it." You do, then back away. As you return, you nearly bump into a guard who informs you that someone dropped candied ginger near the lotus pond, and that you should probably clean it before the koi mistake it for food. Of course. The koi, as it turns out, are both beautiful and mildly terrifying. You pick up the ginger carefully, while one of them stares at you with the intensity of an imperial accountant. Job done. You return again to the dessert station and finally, sit down. A mooncake is handed to you silently. You bite in. It's warm, sweet, filled with black sesame and something faintly citrusy. You nearly cry. Historians still debate how strictly the kitchen hierarchy was enforced when no one official was watching. Judging by today, gossip may be the most powerful tool in the palace, after the cleaver. You lean back against the wall, the hum of crickets outside blending with the soft clink of teacups and the shuffle of slippers on stone. Someone is singing quietly in a nearby chamber, a lullaby about dumplings, maybe, or exile. You're not sure, but you're too tired to care. The lull of the tea station ends abruptly when a boy runs in, panting, cheeks red with panic. He's waving his arms and shouting something about rice. Burning rice. You've never seen a kitchen staff scatter so fast. Even the dessert matron drops her ladle mid-drizzle. You're swept up in the chaos like a dumpling in a rolling walk. A chef grabs your sleeve and pulls you toward the grain hall, an enormous side room dominated by iron pots, bamboo steamers, and rows of half-cooked congee, bubbling like cauldrons possessed by slightly irritated spirits. The smell hits you first. Smoke, heavy and sharp, rising from a pot the size of a bathtub. A black crust bubbles at the bottom. A charred wooden spoon protrudes like a final cry for help. "Don't just stand there. Stir," someone yells. You rush forward and grab the ladle, It's thick, wooden, slightly burnt itself. You push it into the rice and feel the resistance of what can only be described as a culinary crime scene. Steam blasts your face as you stir. A cloud of singed rice particles explodes upward and sticks to your skin like sticky guilt. Others rush in to salvage what they can, scraping the top layer off into bowls, fanning smoke out the windows, offering silent prayers to every kitchen god ever worshipped. A senior chef arrives, surveys the damage, and closes his eyes in something between agony and resignation. "For the Emperor's lunch," he says, voice flat. "You want to die in your sleep or by boiling oil?" You consider your options. Then a miracle. One of the assistants uncovers a pot in the corner, untouched, pristine, fragrant, with rice fluffed like clouds at sunrise. Somehow, someone had made a backup batch. You've never been so happy to see plain rice in your life. Historians still debate how many rice pots the Forbidden City kitchens operated at once. Some say dozens. Others say closer to 100 during festival season. Either way, losing even one to burning could throw off the timing of the Emperor's tightly choreographed meals. The scorched pot is removed like a fallen soldier. The backup is presented on a lacquered tray and whisked away toward the imperial quarters. No one speaks for a moment. Then, someone pats you on the shoulder. "Could have been worse. Last week, someone salted the millet with sugar." You're not sure if that's comforting. Before you can sit down, you're assigned to cleaning duty. Not pots, not baskets, not fish guts. Toilets. You blink. The supervisor, without emotion, says, "Banquet last night. The South Wing. Overflow situation." You are handed a mop and a grim expression. The latrine complex is tucked behind the storage courtyard, out of sight, and, usually, out of mind. But today, it is not. You enter carefully. The smell is a punch to the soul. You breathe through your mouth and question your commitment to historical immersion. It's not glamorous work. You mop. You scrub. You mutter quiet pleas to ancient sanitation spirits. A rat watches you for a while, then loses interest. You find a shoe. Just one. As you rinse out your bucket, you wonder if anyone will ever know the full range of jobs required to keep a palace fed, clothed, and vaguely hygienic. Probably not. Historians still argue whether palace servants rotated duties or were assigned for life to a single miserable niche. Today, you're every role at once. When you're done, you're told, "Go wash." You sprint, limping to the corner cistern, and dump a ladle of water over your head. It's icy and glorious. You're given clean linens, slightly itchy, but dry. You dress like a new person, a very tired, vinegar-scented person. Then someone shouts, "Spice Vault needs inventory." You flinch. "Already did it," you say. The runner checks a scroll. Then go rest. 10 minutes. 10 whole minutes. You nearly weep. You wander to the back porch, where sacks of flour and dried beans form a kind of lumpy bench. You sit. You sigh. A breeze blows in. You close your eyes, and instantly fall asleep sitting up, head resting against a sack of mung beans. You wake to someone gently shaking your shoulder. A blur of motion. A hushed voice. Up. You're on pickling duty. Of course you are. You peel yourself off the sack of mung beans, your face now faintly tattooed with a pattern of mesh weave. 10 minutes of sleep. That's probably a luxury around here. Pickling duty, it turns out, is a nighttime task. Why? No one says. Maybe it's the cooler air. Maybe it's tradition. Maybe it's just another layer of kitchen mystery. Either way, you're led to the southern side yard, where enormous ceramic jars stand in rows like sleeping giants, their lids sweating under the moonlight. The pickle master, Elder Chen again, naturally, hands you a ladle, a pair of heavy gloves, and a serious look. Don't drop anything in, especially yourself. You begin. The jars are filled with all manner of things. Radishes sliced into perfect spirals, mustard greens compressed into dense layers, cucumbers floating in an ominously dark liquid that smells of 5 spice and existential dread. You stir gently, using a long-handled paddle. Each turn releases new waves of scent. Sour, salty, sharp, and something unidentifiably earthy. Your job is simple. Make sure nothing settles too long. Agitate the vegetables. Circulate the brine. Check for mold. And, if needed, scoop off the scum that forms at the surface. You do not love this job, but there's something oddly calming about it. The yard is quiet. The moon is high. Crickets chirp. Occasionally, a bat swoops overhead. You stir. Some jars bubble as you agitate them, releasing a burp of trapped air that sounds suspiciously like a sigh. Others resist entirely, as if daring you to try again. One jar, full of fermented garlic, makes you tear up from 3 feet away. You wipe your eyes and stir anyway. A girl nearby is handling the ginger jars. She hums softly to herself, something repetitive and soothing. A melody you've never heard but immediately trust. She nods at you. You nod back. There's a strange camaraderie among those who smell permanently of vinegar. Do you know the legend? She asks. You pause. Which one? She gestures to the row of jars. They say one of these holds a radish from the Yongle Emperor's wedding feast. Still crisp. Still perfect. But no one knows which one. You both stare at the jars for a moment. One of them bubbles ominously. Historians still argue whether the pickling traditions of the Forbidden City were practical, ceremonial, or deeply symbolic. Elder Chen would say yes to all 3, and then hand you another jar. A sudden splash breaks the quiet. You whip around. One of the junior assistants has dropped a ladle into the chili pickle vat. She's frozen with horror. You rush over, grab a wooden pole, and fish it out. Success. Except now your gloves are dripping red brine, and your forearms feel like they've been marinated in lightning. Elder Chen appears behind you like a vinegar-scented shadow. Wash immediately, he says. You do. You dunk your arms into the rinse barrel and gasp. It's cold, but the sting is still real. Your skin hums. Someone hands you a towel. You pat dry and take a step back, watching the pickle yard come back to its slow, silent rhythm. By midnight, the air is heavy with salt and the faint perfume of aging cabbage. The jars are all stirred. The scum is cleared. The legends remain unproven. You're told you can return to your station. But first, tea. You follow a narrow corridor to a small service room where a kettle hums over a quiet fire. A teacup waits for you. Hot, plain, steeped with chrysanthemum and the barest hint of honey. You sip. It tastes like survival. You hear footsteps and hide your cup quickly. You're not sure if it's allowed or not. Relax, says a voice. It's the young eunuch who guided you through the egg disaster. He pours himself a cup. No one checks this far after midnight. You sit together for a moment, drinking in companionable silence. Somewhere in the distance, a bell chimes. Soft, deep, far away. He speaks without looking at you. The kitchens never sleep. Just wait their turn. You nod. You both sip again. Then he stands and says, "They're asking for tea at the embroidery wing." He doesn't say you have to go, but of course you do. You take another cup with you. You carry the tea carefully, both hands steady, feet quiet on the worn stones. The moon lights your way now. silver and pale and so indifferent to your exhaustion that it almost feels personal. The embroidery wing lies nestled along the quieter edges of the forbidden city. You've never been here. The air is different, cleaner, perfumed faintly with sandalwood and pressed silk. The voices here are hushed. Movements are softer, but that doesn't mean it's any less intimidating. You pass under a wooden arch carved with cranes and plum blossoms, and soon arrive at the doorway, where 2 attendants wait, one holding the edge of a curtain aside. You bow, lower the tray, and leave without a word. That's the rule here. Deliver. Disappear. As you retreat into the corridor, you exhale, gently, so no one hears it. You think that might be the last errand. Then a man with ink-stained hands runs past holding what looks like an armful of half-written scrolls. He's muttering about chicken feet. You don't ask. You return to the main kitchen compound, stepping back into the familiar symphony of clattering ladles, sloshing pots, and quiet curses muttered over sticky steamers. Even this late, the kitchen breathes, restless, rotating, always preparing. Your new task? Spice sorting. Again, but this time it's in the dungeon. The spice storage dungeon, as the others call it, is a long, narrow stone chamber beneath the northwest wing. It stays cool year-round and smells like the inside of 1,000 teapots. Shelves line the walls, filled with parchment-wrapped bundles, labeled tins, and hundreds of tiny jars that jingle softly when disturbed. You're handed a cloth and told to dust. That's it. Just dust. At first, it seems easy. Then the sneezing begins. Pepper dust. Clove crumbs. Ground cinnamon that rises in ghostly clouds the moment your cloth touches it. You sneeze once, then again, then 6 more times in a row. It's not dignified. Your nose runs. Your eyes sting. A nearby monk, yes, somehow a monk is also down here, politely moves 2 shelves away from you without saying a word. At one point, you jostle a stack of nutmeg and trigger a minor avalanche. It sounds like a polite landslide. You freeze. No one yells, so you clean it up and move on. Halfway through, you spot something odd. A jar with no label, wrapped in red string and sealed with wax. You pick it up, turn it over, then quietly place it back exactly where it was. Some mysteries are not yours to solve. Historians still argue whether the Forbidden City kitchens kept truly accurate spice records, or whether half the jars were used based on smell and superstition. Judging by the unlabeled ones down here, you'd guess a bit of both. Eventually, the sneezing subsides. The shelves are cleaner. You feel slightly calmer. Something about rows and rows of organized jars makes the chaos outside seem manageable. You climb back up to the main level and are greeted by the sound of a dropped wok. Someone yells. A second voice yells louder. You slip around them quietly. At the tea prep station, you stop for water. A jug stands ready, cool, copper, blessedly silent. You pour, sip, and lean against the wall. Then you hear the clink. A tray of pastry molds has just hit the floor. The chef responsible is frozen. One of the brass molds rolls to your foot. You pick it up and hand it back without a word. The chef nods. And that's when it happens. You're told to sit. "You've earned a minute," says the steamer captain, a woman with arms like stone and the voice of someone who doesn't waste syllables. You sit on a low stool by the dough table. She passes you a bun. It's warm. Software filled with red bean paste, and just enough sweetness to remind you what joy tastes like. You chew slowly, eyes closing, the noise of the kitchen fading into a comforting hum. Somewhere behind you, someone begins singing, softly, tunelessly, A song about a dumpling festival you've never heard of. A rolling pin taps the counter in rhythm. A spoon clinks against a porcelain bowl. This, you realize, is what peace looks like in a palace kitchen. Not silence, but rhythm. The rhythm doesn't last. Just as you're finishing the last bite of your red bean bun, bliss melting between your teeth, a runner bursts through the steam doors, panting and wild-eyed. Empress Dowager requests almond jelly. Now, no delay. There's a pause, as if the entire kitchen collectively rolls its eyes in silence. Then movement. The jelly crew springs into action. You, somehow part of this now, are handed a tray of gelatin sheets and told to start soaking them. You don't ask how you've become part of the jelly crew. You just obey. The almond jelly is a prized dish. Delicate, silky, lightly sweet, and extremely finicky. One wrong move and it becomes gritty. One too many drops of almond extract and it tastes like cleaning fluid. One delay and you're out of the palace. Or worse, on duck gut duty. You submerge the gelatin sheets in a brass bowl of cool water. They soften like flower petals left out in the rain. The scent of ground almonds floats in from the nearby mixing station, where two assistants are carefully balancing sweetness with essence, whisking while barely breathing. In another pot, someone heats syrup with agar and rock sugar. It bubbles like a quiet warning. You glance over and spot the Empress Dowager's seal, an embroidered red cloth waiting beside the serving dish. The pressure is real. The head jelly maker, a man who has never once blinked, at least as far as you can tell, tests the mixture with a small spoon. He tastes. He nods. He doesn't smile. He just turns and says, "Go." You pour the jelly base into porcelain molds, tiny ceramic bowls shaped like lotus petals. You tap each gently to remove air bubbles, line them up on a tray, and cover them with muslin cloth. They're rushed to the ice chamber to set, then plated with slices of preserved apricot and a single candied cherry in the center. You carry the tray to the service hall, heart pounding with every step. Each bowl jiggles just slightly, a cruel reminder of their fragility. You reach the delivery point. You kneel. You present the tray. An attendant takes it without speaking and disappears into the shadows. You wait for a moment. No one yells. You are not summoned for punishment. You rise and return to the kitchen, a faint tremble still lingering in your fingers. Someone hands you tea again. You don't question it. Historians still argue whether the Empress Dowager's taste for almond jelly shaped dessert trends across the Qing court, mutters a nearby assistant as you sip. But I think she just liked making us suffer. You nod in agreement. Night deepens. Lanterns burn low, their soft golden halos flickering against the kitchen walls. The pace slows, not because the work is done, but because even imperial kitchens need to breathe eventually. You're reassigned to egg prep, not cooking, just separating yolks and whites. You sit at a long table with a dozen others, each working in near silence. One bowl for yolks, one for whites. Crack, split, pour, repeat. It's meditative, except when you crack a double yolk. The person next to you gasps. "Lucky," she whispers. "That means you'll get noodles for breakfast." You blink. "Is that real?" She shrugs. "It was last week." Historians still debate how much of the Forbidden City's daily kitchen lore was based in truth, and how much was just sleep-deprived survival mythology. After 17 hours, you understand both. You finish your stack. Your yolk bowl gleams golden, like treasure in a fable. The head baker passes by, glances at your work, and gives the tiniest of nods. You beam, or maybe you hallucinate beaming. Either way, it's a win. Another bell sounds, this one low, slow, like a temple chime underwater. That's final meal prep, someone murmurs. You stretch your fingers, roll your shoulders, and head toward the dumpling hall. It never ends. But somehow, it's starting to feel like home. You arrive in the dumpling hall just in time to see someone throw a rolling pin across the room. Not in anger, but as a warning. Too much water in the dough, a voice yells. A pale, dough-dusted assistant groans. It was humid. Blame the air. Nobody does. Everyone just adjusts. The dumpling hall is a world of its own. It smells of scallions, sesame oil, and slightly singed wrappers. Long wooden tables stretch wall to wall, covered in flour, dough balls, and trays of fillings. Every few feet, a bowl of water waits, used to seal edges like culinary glue. You're handed a ball of dough and a wooden pin that looks like it's seen better centuries. Your first few rolls are a disaster. Ovals, blobs. One looks like a small, sad shoe. The woman next to you, a dumpling veteran with flour in her eyebrows and the authority of someone who's folded through 4 dynasties, grabs your hand. Smaller, thinner, no fat thumbs, she demonstrates. It's like watching origami in motion. You try again. Better. Then again. Almost respectable. You're moved to the filling line. Chopped chives, minced pork, finely diced mushrooms, mashed tofu. Everything seasoned so perfectly you consider sneaking a bite. But the stern look of the folding matron stops you mid-thought. You begin the sacred fold. Pinch, press, tuck, rotate, repeat. They line up like tiny half-moons on a bamboo tray. It's peaceful, repetitive, safe. Until someone says, "The imperial astrologer just ordered dumplings with 5 folds only. No more, no less." The entire room groans. Apparently, this is based on a dream he had involving a crane and a bowl of soup. You don't argue. You start over. 1 fold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Seal. Again. 1, 2, 3. You sneeze. Your dumpling explodes slightly. You hide it under a napkin and pretend nothing happened. Historians still argue whether court astrologers actually influenced meal preparation, or were simply humored by exhausted chefs desperate to avoid confrontation. The kitchen's collective eye roll suggests it's a bit of both. You keep folding. Someone begins singing again. This time, a faster song, almost rhythmic, meant to keep hands moving. Fold the edge, tuck it tight, keep the stars and moon just right. You don't know the tune, but you hum along. Eventually, trays are filled. The dumplings are steamed in great towers of bamboo, layers upon layers rising like a ziggurat of hope. Steam bursts from every level, clouding the air, curling your hair into wispy chaos. You're moved again. This time to the plating team. The Emperor's final meal is near. Each dish must be plated in exact sequence, with balance of color, texture, and symbolism. Red next to green, yin next to yang, soft next to crisp. Dumplings with 5 folds arranged in a circle like petals of a flower. Your job? The garnishes. A small bowl of carved radishes shaped like plum blossoms, sprigs of coriander, edible gold leaf, tweezed delicately onto lotus root chips. It's fiddly. It's maddening. It's strangely satisfying. You steady your hand, press the gold leaf into place, and whisper to yourself, "Don't sneeze." Success. A final bell chimes. All trays are lifted, balanced on polished arms, and carried off into the night. Silence follows. Not a reverent silence. More like exhaustion wrapped in quiet. Someone finally speaks. "Well," they say, "now we clean." And so you do. Tables wiped, flour swept, steamers soaked and left to dry, leftover dumplings distributed, though none of the fivefold ones. Those are sacred now, apparently. Someone hands you a plate. 3 imperfect dumplings, one cracked open slightly, but still warm. You sit, you eat, and for the first time all day, you think, maybe you could last another one. Maybe. The dumplings sit warm in your belly, their savory steam still rising faintly from your breath as you stand again, because of course, it isn't over. A KitchenAid approaches, quiet as a whisper. The dowager consort would like midnight tea. Of course she does. Your legs protest, but there's no arguing with imperial whim. You rise, bow slightly, and follow the aide through the shadowed halls of the forbidden city. The night is cool, the sky a deep velvet studded with faint stars. The palace is hushed now, as though the buildings themselves are finally resting. The walk is long, winding past gates and silken courtyards where nothing stirs but the wind and a few sleepy lanterns. You arrive at the tea room, one of the smaller satellite kitchens kept warm for late-night requests. The tea master, an elderly man with a robe the color of storm clouds, regards you with mild interest. He gestures at a kettle already humming softly, nestled among jars of dried flowers and curled tea leaves. Chrysanthemum and ginseng, he says, with 2 drops of plum syrup. No more. You nod. He steps aside. You select the ingredients with slow hands. The petals are pale gold, light as air. The ginseng root has already been sliced, neatly stacked like delicate bones. You infuse the pot with boiling water and swirl it gently, watching the petals dance as they steep. The aroma fills the room, soothing, floral, with a hint of something earthy and sharp beneath. You pour carefully into a porcelain teapot, lid adorned with a tiny phoenix, and place it on a lacquered tray with a single cup. You breathe once, then carry it. The dowager's chambers are quiet. Her attendants take the tray without speaking. You kneel, present, then back away. No nod, no scowl. Just the click of the door closing behind you, which is, by palace standards, a rousing success. You return to the kitchen at a slower pace this time. Your body aches. Your toes feel like overcooked dumplings. As you approach the kitchen compound, you hear laughter. Not raucous, not chaotic. Just a soft, weary laughter shared by a few cooks huddled near a brazier, hands warming over glowing coals, their silhouettes haloed by emberlight. You drift toward them. Someone offers a roasted chestnut. You take it, peel it slowly, and bite in. Sweet, nutty, a little smoky. Perfect. A young baker nudges you. First day? You nod. She smirks. You didn't cry? That's good. You're not sure if she's serious. She leans back, arms crossed. You'll dream of rolling pins and pickle jars tonight. Maybe even see the Empress Dowager in your sleep. If she offers you almond jelly, run. You both laugh. Historians still argue whether late-night camaraderie between palace kitchen staff contributed to information leaks or simply maintained morale. Given the way secrets are traded here like spice jars, it's likely both. You sit with them for a while, the brazier crackling softly beside you. Someone starts humming that same dumpling folding song again. It loops around the circle, each voice joining in quietly. There's no formal end to the workday, just this slow, gentle unraveling. Someone dozes off mid-sentence. Another wraps a cloth around their shoulders like a cape and curls up on a flour sack. The fire burns lower. A broom falls with a soft thud. No one moves to pick it up. You stand, stretch, and begin wandering the edges of the kitchen again. You pass the tea station, empty. The pickle yard, silent. The rice room, still faintly smoky from earlier, but clean. You feel the gravity of sleep pulling at your bones. Then someone hands you a blanket. You blink. It's the dumpling matron. She says nothing, just nods toward the corner of the prep hall. You walk there, and see it, a small nook, partly shielded by hanging herbs and a stack of unused baskets. A place just big enough to curl into. You lie down. Your muscles sigh in relief. You pull the blanket over yourself and stare at the flickering shadow of lanterns on the ceiling beams. The forbidden city is quiet now, at least for a moment. And you finally close your eyes. Sleep doesn't last long in the forbidden city. Maybe an hour. 2 if you're lucky. The kitchen never truly sleeps. It just dims, like a lantern lowered behind silk. But you feel every second of rest sink into your muscles like warm water, softening the ache and making you briefly forget that your pillow is a rolled apron and your blanket smells like scallions. Then, a bell. Low, slow, deliberate. You open one eye. The steamer captain is already walking past, tying her apron. She doesn't speak. She doesn't have to. It's breakfast prep time. You rise, joints protesting, mind foggy but surprisingly willing. Today's breakfast isn't just any meal. It's the Emperor's dawn meal, served before sunrise, and every item must reflect balance, energy, and serenity. That means a precise mix of hot congee, delicate buns, slivered fruits, candied walnuts, and clear herbal broth. You're assigned to congee duty. You stir the massive copper pot, watching as rice slowly breaks down into creamy velvet. The steam curls around your face, and for a moment, it's like a facial, one that smells like chicken stock. The secret, they tell you, is timing. Too early, and it's watery. Too late, and it's glue. You stir clockwise, then switch. The elder watching over you grunts in approval. A tray of preserved duck eggs is delivered, each one with marbled whites like cracked porcelain. You slice them carefully, placing 1/2 atop each congee bowl with military precision. A drizzle of scallion oil, a whisper of pepper. It's beautiful, actually. One bowl is set aside, the Emperor's. It's lifted and carried away on a carved tray, flanked by 2 stewards in embroidered robes. You catch a glimpse of your reflection in the polished metal teapot beside it. You look exhausted. You look proud. Historians still argue whether the imperial breakfast was truly eaten at dawn, or whether it was served as a ritual before court began, only touched symbolically. Either way, you've just fed the Son of Heaven. And now, as the rest of the palace begins to stir, your shift begins to end. You help wash the pots. You mop the stone floors. You stack the unused dishes, wrap leftover radish flowers, and fold cloths until your hands move without thought. A small feast is prepared for the kitchen staff, a reward after the morning meal. Simple things: rice porridge, boiled peanuts, warm soy milk. You eat cross-legged on the floor beside the others, sipping from a wooden bowl. The same girl who taught you to fold dumplings sits beside you, nodding as you bite into a preserved plum. "Still here," she says. You smile. Barely. As the sun rises over the red-tiled roofs of the Forbidden City, its rays catching on golden finials and fluttering silk banners, you realize just how many people make this palace run, not with swords, but with ladles. You never see the Emperor. You never even glimpse the royal family, but you've touched their day, their meals, their comfort, and somehow that feels bigger than it should. The senior chef walks past, claps your shoulder once and mutters, "Not bad for a first day." You almost cry. Instead, You take your empty bowl to the washing station, rinse it clean, and place it back in line with the others. And then you are told you may rest. For real this time. You head toward the storage rooms, where the warmest corners are tucked between bags of millet and spare steamer lids. You lie down, curled like a shrimp bun, and exhale. Your body aches. Your hair smells like rice vinegar. Your fingers are permanently wrinkled from steam. But your heart, it's oddly full. You survived. Barely. But you survived. The heat of the kitchen fades from your skin as the cool shadows settle around you. The bustle of the palace, its boiling pots, rattling trays, and shouted instructions, melts away like steam rising into the rafters. Now, there is only breath. Yours, steady and slow. The air soft and still. Imagine the gentle crackle of a brazier as it dies down to embers. The whisper of silk shoes padding across stone. The low coo of pigeons waking in distant rafters above the grand hall. The forbidden city breathes. Yes, but for now, it does so gently, like you. In the dark, the scent of lotus root lingers faintly in your hair. The weight of that first red bean bun remembered only by the warmth still tucked inside your ribs. The ache in your hands, in your legs, in your very bones. That's the proof of what you did. You lived a full day in a world no longer here. You sliced. You stirred. You folded, ran, spilled, saved, steamed, and served. You endured. The dream of the palace lingers, even as your eyes begin to close. The glittering bowls, the pickled secrets, the jelly under moonlight, all gently dissolving. Let them go now. Let them drift like steam through the rafters. You are safe. You are still. And somewhere in the heart of that ancient city, a dumpling waits for you in your dreams. Sleep well.